Today, on the Magic Kool-aid report, I'm going to be discussing where I really believe that in some places I was a little bit wrong with the Joneses and what they're doing with accountability, as well as with really exercising good business judgment. Because we all remember the first press conference where he came out and he was talking about availability being one of the main reasons why some of his best players they moved on from, and it came across to most of us as petty. But as I began to think about it and listen to Jerry a little bit more and listen to Steven a little bit wrong, I'm more so thinking I was wrong and some of us, or we was wrong and they were right. But let me measure this Kool-Aid and you'll see it, because this is very important that we really measure this.
It's a big thing for Boss Cowboy to actually say publicly that he drunk Kool-Aid. Listen, I do not drink Kool-Aid without first measuring.
So first, starting with the press conference, let me just listen to him, and then I'm going to listen to him more and more as time progresses. So let's just listen to Jerry Jones at the initial press conference.
We've lost some key players. Those were totally our decision to make those. They weren't. They were influenced. Here's what has happened. We've lost three really high-profile players. Those players were in the top 10 of our players that make the most money. When you get in that spot, I can tell you, your standards go up. Your bar is higher. Your conduct is higher. Your attention to the team is higher, not just your own performance, but everything. When you have that kind of responsibility, which you do when you have that much of the financial pie. So what I'm trying to say is those decisions were made more about availability than ability. And they were made as to how you arrived at not being unavailable at times. And so let me be real clear. We're in a sport, we're in football, where certainly your skill level and your ability to be a player is why you're even being considered as a player. But more important than anything, these decisions that I made, relative to top players not being here had everything to do with their availability.
Most of us view that as petty, right? Because it's like, why would you, in the very first press conference, come out and speak against those players that's no longer with us? But the more and more I thought about it, and the more and more I listened to Jerry, to me, this is about managing the players that's here, not the players that's gone. So I want y'all to listen to him when he was on the NFL Network, and then I'm going to put it all together with this measured Kool-Aid. Listen.
Right. Hey, Jerry Baldy was just mentioning, we were talking about, when Dak and Zeke came into the league in 16 and had that, phenomenal run. You had the best offensive line in football in 2016. Baldy said it himself here. How far do you feel like you are getting back to that kind of distinction with this group, after drafting Tyler this year in the first round up on the offensive line?
Well, I don't know that we can get back to that point that one Baldy's talking about. I will agree with you. We had a group put together. I don't know that there was anything but first-round picks in that group. But that's
pretty
not
special.
That's not possible to do in the way we are in the NFL today. But what we do have are some young players that I've seen, and we have seen certainly over the last 2 years, that are very capable of continuing steal, ball. Those guys are very capable. We would like to have Tyron Smith have more availability. We would like to have Tyron Smith have more availability, which can. Those guys are very capable. We would like to have Tyron Smith have more availability, which can certainly, his camp is encouraging. We'd like to see that right there. And then we're going to get that snaps out of our draft pick Smith. So I like where we are. Nobody's under the illusion here that you've got a line like the one we had 3 and 4 years ago, that Dak and Zeke came in behind.
You can see the availability speech continue, but it was at an existing player. It was with an existing player. He brought up Tyron Smith, and he said, we're going to get that out of Tyler. Basically, we just trying to get that out of Tyron. And it makes sense. It makes sense. And it makes sense from a business standpoint. So what I'm starting to believe that happened, to be all the way honest, I think they had an off-season intervention where they obviously had to look at all the contracts that they signed, right? But it's not even just the contracts over the years and what they meant to the team, but it was also, how did we manage those guys? Did we manage those guys in a way that maintained fear? Did we, or did they start resting on their laurels? Right now, we can easily say with Amari, that wasn't the case. It wasn't no resting on no laurels. We ain't hearing that. Y'all under targeted him. With Randy Gregory, it wasn't no resting on it. He was ready. He was playing. He wasn't as consistent, but he also didn't get his bag yet. So he wasn't somebody that was in the camp of top paid. But somebody that looked like they got their bag and they changed some was Lael. We kept seeing the issues of coming in camp not in ideal shape. And I think the Cowboys had to do some self-assessment and say, what did we do to cause that type of behavior? And what are we going to do going forward to try to get every ounce out of the people that we are paying? And once we pay you, that's basically saying we have to depend on you. So I think it's a couple of business principles that's been exercised here. The first one is cohesive power. So cohesive power is something that I learned about when I was in a business school. And that's basically, cohesive power is a kind of power that comes from one's ability to punish others. This means that if you possess this power, you are in position to produce a negative outcome for another person. An example, when a teacher punishes a student for failing to do homework. And I'm going to tell you, in a lot of business relationships, you have to have some type of cohesive power, because it's in the nature of most people to do the least amount of as possible. And so I say this from somebody that been leading people for a while. That's an entrepreneur, managed and did all kind of stuff. One of the major principles that I learned early is that everybody that you either partner with or that's under you is eventually gonna need a kick in their behind. That's just period. I don't care how good they are. I don't care if it's somebody that as upstanding as Dak. Eventually, even people that Mr. Do the right thing, just trust me on this, eventually they all need a kick in their behind on the standards of what you're trying to uphold in terms of excellence in your enterprise or your business. That's just how it goes. So I think it's another principle that's also being focused on with the Cowboys too. And that's the Pareto Principle. Okay. The Pareto Principle states that for many outcomes, roughly 80% of consequences come from 20% of causes, or some people would call it the vital few. Okay. So obviously the vital few are your guys that's on contract. And I think the Cowboys are looking back saying, okay, we have paid guys, but we have not done anything to keep a sense of fear with these guys. We have basically in our organization no cohesive power. There's no perceived ability to punish. So now it makes sense. And I have to say that my initial reactions to Jerry was wrong, because you have to embrace this confrontation. Now we know the details of why these guys was let go. Some of them was bogus, but I have no problems with you using the bogusness of why some of these guys was let go as a reason to keep cohesive power within your organization. Because what you're trying to do is exercise the Pareto's principle and maximize all you can out of the players that you have. You gotta do this, because what if at his older age, T. Smith is starting to want to kind of lay in bed just a little bit more? What are the reminders to Zach Martin that we still require your best? What are the reminders to Zeke that, hey, you can't take no days off? That, hey, you can go out and party. I'm not saying he's doing this. Or you can chill at the crib and rest your body. What's going to make sure that Dak is going to stay home with his new lady versus partying in the streets, right? Because sometimes it can just take a little bit of distractions and you won't get your maximum out of the Pareto's principle, the 80-20 rule. And that's a fact. So from this, I commend Jerry now, because a lot of us was upset, and rightfully so, at the initial press conference. But when we start thinking about it, this is the necessary part of business, y'all. I'm just being all the way honest. Like, and yes, Jerry has scorned us with the publicity stunts that he pulls. But every now and then, the business side has to be exercised to where you have to have confrontation, sometimes with the people that's the most skilled. It's just part of it. For example, one of my favorite shows is a show called Bar Rescue. If you're not watching that show, you should watch that show, especially if you're an entrepreneur, especially if you're a manager, especially if you're a business owner. Because what you see with Bar Rescue, and one of the principles that I love watching that, is he always says, if you want to turn the culture around, one of the things that you have to do immediately is go fire the weakest link in the bar. He said, because what that does is that causes the people that actually have potential to give that much more effort to turn the bar around. So he comes in and he does an amazing job, Mr. John Taffer, at addressing culture and how to restore stars to stars. So that's what's going on, in my opinion. Is Jerry and them are using, in my opinion, some of these ball drops, which was some of their ball drops. Some of these ball drops, some of them was legit. I think the Lyle was legit as the reason why you was unavailable, as a reason to be Mr. John Taffer from Bar Rescue, to where the whole idea is I gotta make sure I'm getting the best out of my 20% guys, the Pareto Principle guys, the guys that are really the vital few. And this year, we're not going to just pay guys and then not say anything about the accountability that goes with being paid what you're paid. And nobody likes it. Nobody want to hear it. Dak don't want to hear about his money. He felt like he earned it. Zeke don't want to hear about it. He felt like he earned it. T. Smith don't want to hear it. He felt like he earned it. Zach don't want to hear it. He felt like he earned it. But it's not about did you initially earn it. It's about what are you going to do to keep it? And what are the Cowboys going to do to make sure that they're maintaining a culture that continues to get the best out of the vital few? So basically, that's the Measure Kool-Aid report of how I see what's going on with the Cowboys. And even though it wasn't executed perfectly with Jerry's press conference, I have to say I understand it. And I have to say this is the necessary thing that what you want to do when you do have a championship in goal. You can't just manage the 80%. You got to maximize the 20%. So if you like this type of content, man, y'all make sure y'all continue to follow Boss Cowboy Sports. We really appreciate the growth. We was just at 4,000. We already at 4,100. So, I mean, obviously we growing real fast. It's obvious, and it's because of y'all hitting that like and sharing. But let's also get the shares up. That's also just as important to really spread the content and spread this news, because obviously here we're committed to trying to give you the greatest information to try to help us win 6. And on this one, Jerry and them right. Executed, I would give them a 70, but intentions, I would give them 100. Y'all stay tuned to Boss Cowboy Sports. We got more of this coming.